Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Secrets to Azure and Microsoft 365 Data Resilience. I love that. I love starting a title with "The Secret To." Makes me feel like we're in for a cool adventure today. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Rubric and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media. I'm so happy to be your moderator for this interesting and layered conversation. Today, we're here to talk about Azure. We're going to talk about data, and most importantly, we're going to talk about resiliency because threat actors are out there and ransomware attacks are not going away. And I'm guessing that since you are here with us today, you already recognize that your growing Microsoft Azure and multi-cloud data is mission critical to your organization's business operations, scalability, and growth. So it's a little bit like sitting on a pile of sugar in a rainstorm. You know you've got something great, but if you can't find a good umbrella, it's probably not going to stay put for long. Luckily, today we have two top experts who are here to hand you all an umbrella. These innovative speakers from Rubric will help you address any security gaps. We're going to help you meet your organization's resiliency goals, explore some zero trust, and more. Basically, it's going to be a fascinating conversation, and I can't wait to get started. So I'm going to fly through a few of the more important housekeeping points just to get us on our way here. All right, so first, I want to draw your attention to the questions section of your webinar console. Now, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of experts like we have with us here today. Now, I know that this session is going to get all of your inquisitive minds fired up, so make sure to get those technical questions in. Now, if we are unable to get to your question during the live session, don't worry because the Rubric team will be following up with you after the webinar wraps today. Also, a quick reminder that the question console is a great place to say hi and reach out to your friends in the Actual Tech Media community. I've loved seeing all the hellos and good mornings coming in. I see a lot of familiar names, and that's amazing. Welcome to all of you. It's also the best place to reach out and let us know if you do have any technical issues during the session. Knock on wood, of course. I do want to remind you all that a browser refresh is going to get rid of any of the usual issues, but if something's being a little bit annoying today and the browser refresh isn't helping, no problem. Just send us a message through that chat there, and the Actual Tech Media team is there to help you out. Okay, so skipping along, and let's look at the Handouts tab, which is right next to the Questions tab. So if you were with me in the Questions tab, just move your eyes one over to the Handouts tab, and you're going to see some exciting content to go along with our webinar today, including, you can actually take a look at the presenter slide deck. So that's pretty cool. You can also download the Rubric Technical White Paper, Rubrik Security Cloud, how it works, cloud native protection for Azure VMs, plus the Rubric White Paper, Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft environments, plus the Rubric Technical White Paper, Microsoft 365 Architecture and Security. See, I told you, jam-packed with cool resources. It's an absolute great collection of information for you all. So be sure to open those tabs up, download them, save them for follow-up reading after we wrap today. Now, hey, it is not just awesome content that we're giving away. We also have a $300 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar, so stay tuned for that. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those prize terms and conditions are, no problem. Head on back over to that Handouts tab we were just talking about. Scroll down to the very bottom there, and you can find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, I just mentioned this, but we absolutely love getting all of your technical questions during these webinars. It really is what makes these so exciting to be a part of. And hopefully that intrinsic value is enough incentive for you, but we have a little bit of extra incentive here. So at the end of our webinar today, we're going to review all the questions that are asked, and we'll choose the very best question from the whole group, and we're going to send them a $50 Amazon gift card as a special thank you for being awesome. So a reminder that, again, because we're reviewing these afterwards, even if we don't get to your question during the live discussion, you're still entered to win just by asking that question. So get those brains fired up, get your fingers all stretched out, get those keyboards ready, and be sure to get your questions in. All right. Well, that's it for this, the important stage setting, and now we can jump right into this discussion. So let's bring out our two expert speakers and dive in. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Kim Lambert. She's the Principal Product Marketing Manager at Rubric, and Joe Kelly, Cloud Solution Architect at Rubric. Kim, I think you're going to kick us off today, so the mic is all yours.
Okay. Hey everyone, yes, hi, Kim Lambert here. Thanks so much for joining us today as we unveil the secrets to Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365 cyber resilience. So get excited because it's not just me you're listening to today. I have here with me one of our best technical gurus, Joe Kelly. He is a cloud solutions architect. Joe has over 20 years of experience in the IT space. He has expertise in automation, cloud architecture, cloud design, and he has experience designing virtualization and storage solutions for our customers, especially with hybrid cloud environments, and implementing cybersecurity best practices for them as well. So Joe is here to give you an in-depth demo of protection for some of your most critical workloads, including Azure VMs, Azure SQL, and Microsoft 365. And he's going to show you how that protection all comes together to make your data resilient. All right, so today, here's what I want you to walk away knowing, if nothing else. I want you to know how to address potential gaps in security and understand how Rubric can help meet your business resiliency goals, how to protect native Azure workloads like Azure SQL with operational efficiency, automation, governance, and then what it means to back up data, including your cloud native applications in Microsoft 365 with a zero trust architecture. So how do we at Rubric provide this data security? Well, at Rubric, we provide a zero trust data security platform called Rubrik Security Cloud. And we've built this platform from the ground up. And when I say zero trust, it's basically taking the mindset that we're designing our products with the mindset of assume a breach has happened, and operate in that manner. And in that vein, Rubrik Security Cloud helps our customers globally recover from cyber attacks and the actions of malicious insiders, as well as operational disruptions, all in the name of business continuity. So this makes your data across infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, resilient wherever it lives, because then it's under a watchful eye where you can proactively monitor risks with powerful data observability capabilities like sensitive data discovery and ransomware investigation. And of course, so that you can easily recover that data at a moment's notice at scale. And, to be able to offer some of these top-notch capabilities, you should really know that Rubric has partnered up with Microsoft for a combined zero trust approach to data security. So off the bat, you know that we're serious about helping customers secure their data in the public cloud. And Microsoft actually took an equity stake in Rubric at the end of 2021, and we work really closely with them as a strategic partner. Now, this partnership works especially well because of our joint mission, which is together, Rubric and Microsoft deliver zero trust data security to protect your mission critical apps, manage your hybrid cloud environments, and defend them against escalating ransomware threats. Now, this partnership puts us in an incredibly favorable position to help you. So that's great in terms of innovation, technical support. We've got a great interlock there to help our customers, and it's built on a true value exchange. So Microsoft is focused on delivering world-class infrastructure security, and then Rubric is focused on world-class data security. So Microsoft and Rubric go hand in hand to be better together in the sense that we already manage hundreds of petabytes of data on Azure. We have over 2,500 joint customers. Rubric was actually recently named Azure Partner of the Year, and we have the technology in place to secure your Microsoft data right alongside your on-prem data and in other cloud environments. So speaking of protecting data in other cloud environments, this means, and I think this is important to say, that even though the shared responsibility model, so we all know about this, we've heard about this for a long time, it still very much exists, it still applies, but with our partnership, Microsoft has then become an established and invested player at this point. So in essence, they're taking an actual stance on recovery. So they're working with Rubric as a trusted third-party vendor for backup, which Microsoft even recommends in their documentation as the first step to ransomware recovery. Okay, why? Well, that's because, and you may be surprised to hear this when we talk about this a lot for Microsoft 365, is Microsoft provides no SLA for data recovery. That's important to know. You are responsible for your data. Because whether it's infrastructure as a service, PaaS, SaaS, that shared responsibility model for data protection says the onus lies on you, the customer, to back up and recover your data. Simple as that. Because as you may be well aware already, as your data in the cloud grows, it can become more of this more cloud, more problems type scenario with this huge breadth of applications and services you're running and using in the cloud. And this hits different people in your organization in different ways. So with multi-cloud complexity, someone in your organization has to be operationalizing backups across VMs, managed disks, your databases in the cloud. So, think about operations, data infrastructure ops. They want to be able to optimize costs to back up and quickly restore data, to consolidate and simplify infrastructure. Think about the architects. They just want to build fast. They want to not worry about things like data governance. Others just need the applications and data available with no interruption. Think about security ops. They need to be able to feel confident in your organization's ability to recover the data, right? And then, of course, think about your CIO. They want to be able to just prove attack readiness, right? And, that can be something that is really tough with complex organizational structures and goals. So, the reason we talk about this is because when your data environments are fragmented, this means that you're still having multiple accounts to manage, which can be a lot, especially if you have more than one cloud vendor that you're working with, right? Maybe you're not just in Microsoft, maybe you're in AWS, Azure, Google. Having to set up all of the different components around retention and frequency, replication, and expiration. And then if you've got multiple regions to protect data, there's still the need to set up all these different components around retention and frequency. And that's just for one account, right? So when you're deploying resources with multiple regions, within multiple regions, that also entails managing backup schemes across all these different regions that can quickly spiral out of control. I mean, look at the screen here, right? With you managing backup upon backup upon backup job. And then of course here, this is here all along, don't forget about it. You may have that on-premises environment that needs that same sort of governance and security. So this all becomes a lot to manage. It's manual, it's resource intensive, and it's just not scalable. And that's just data protection management, right? What about data security? What about being able to recover your data when you need it from secure, uncompromised backups? Well, it's a lot to think about. It can be difficult to maintain visibility into dynamic data security and protection requirements across those multiple environments. Recovery processes are siloed. In a ransomware scenario, you may have one cloud hit or multiple cloud environments, as well as your data center that we talked about, right? So when you think about protecting fragmented data environments in the cloud, you may think, okay, I don't have as much of a problem with all this now, but you have to consider, hey, maybe native tools are working for your Azure environment. But wait, I'm also utilizing Microsoft 365. I know that other folks in our business have been talking about maybe building an AWS and wait, we do have a GCP environment to consider. All this spirals pretty quickly in dynamic environments. So with all these platforms, you may not have the right experienced technical resources. Keep that in mind. You may not have that in place to effectively, not only manage the backup jobs, but be able to rapidly recover from clean data snapshots in the case of ransomware. And we find many customers we talk to have struggled to obtain in a holistic view, have difficulty even generating the data recovery readiness proof, being able to see that, everything that they need to prove to their CIO, whether it's reports they can deliver or a plan they can present to the board to show that they are prepared. And that's where we at Rubric come in, so not to worry, right? Our cloud approach is made to address the challenges that customers we talk to face. It has three tenets in essence. So first, we drive automated business resiliency and security at the point of data in the cloud with secure backups by creating a data bunker. So your backup is logically air-gapped, it's kept separate, it's removed from identity boundaries that can be breached. Rubric even has the ability to archive to secure storage with the option of a Rubric managed service built on Azure. And this is called Rubric Cloud Vault. And Rubric Cloud Vault provides an isolated offsite data archival. So you can use storage tiering for AWS and Azure for lower cost long-term storage as well. And by design, our storage tiering capability is what provides immutable backups for your Azure VMs and managed disks using native Azure Blob immutability. Now, second, you can also get started really quickly. It's easy to scale as your business grows without breaking the bank. You can ensure your cloud resources are protected as those architects we talked about, build fast across this fragmented ecosystem. So with Rubrik Security Cloud, we're eliminating a lot of toil by consolidating the data management layer. And we're drastically reducing the amount of operational impact that it has on your team, especially if you have resources that have to spend valuable cycles doing Azure, AWS, Microsoft 365 protection, right? So you're getting a defined baseline backup across all these resources. You're using tiering features at the same time to optimize storage costs. So we've got great stuff going on in the background. But really, it's all about fast recovery when you need it, right? It's deploying cloud protection. And even if you're coupling that with on-prem appliances or software delivered globally, you've got a central management plane for data resilience, for observability, for data remediation that can help you really de-risk cloud. It really comes down to that. I'll say you can even assess potential PII, HIPAA, or other classified data exfiltration risk. We've got really interesting things like that within Rubrik Security Cloud with things like sensitive data discovery. So you can fast track reporting across IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, right? So let's talk for a minute about Microsoft 365, which, hey, let's be real, right? For so many businesses, this has become a tier 1 application. It's critical to business operations. But guess what? Hackers also know this. They know that it is a huge target and they're going after it. So threat groups like Lapsus are specifically targeting it as an entry point to other critical infrastructure. So that's why we see things like the US government, CISA, and that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they're recommending all organizations back up their critical applications. They're outright coming out and saying that. And the FBI has even come out and recommended backups as a main cyber defense as well. So they're saying, hey, attackers are going after this. It's important to protect all of this data. And this is critical because, we like to show this to customers. Think about how something might actually play out for Microsoft 365 in an attack scenario. So the way we see breaches is typically through compromise of admin credentials. And there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. Once an attacker has the global admin credentials, they have the keys to do almost anything. And what they'll typically do is start by exporting data to their command and control servers. Then they'll delete some or all of your data, often by manipulating retention policies to delete data. And then, they drop the ransom note. So what do you do next? Do you restore from retention? Keep in mind, retention policies from Microsoft 365, they may have been manipulated to delete data in the first place. So what's scary is hackers can utilize the delete functionality of retention policies to automatically remove all data from your environment. So while Microsoft 365 does have some great native functionality to help you control access, to keep attackers out, they've got compliance tools like these retention policies to help you schedule deletions so you don't keep data longer than you need to. In reality, retention hold can be misused in an account takeover to delete data. And when that happens, unfortunately, there's simply nothing left to recover. So that's scary. Now, if you have some data on litigation hold, people talk about that a lot as an option. Yes, you could possibly try to restore it, but this is not a straightforward process. It could take days, it could take weeks. It's not a viable backup strategy, and there's no guarantee of recovery if you've been attacked. It's Microsoft native classification and search tools like these that are great for compliance, for e-discovery, but legal hold is not designed to be a backup and recovery failsafe. So, remember that. Microsoft actually only recommends using it for just a subset of your data. So what happens then? Well, you're stuck negotiating or you're stuck paying the ransom, right? And we're noticing that potentially other cloud accounts as well as data centers are being breached as well when this is all happening. But with Rubric, okay, let's think about it in a different sort of light. Your backup copy is inaccessible through your Microsoft 365 admin account. So in accordance with a zero trust architecture, Rubric is protected by two-factor authentication, role-based access. With Rubric, we can make sure there's an isolated copy of your data in Azure, but physically separated from the Microsoft 365 tenant and solution. So you can easily locate data with global search. The recovery process is simple and fast. I'm excited to show you that later. Just select a restore point, select users, mailboxes, sites, files, folders, and then you just click to restore. It's that easy. Recovery at scale is made possible using Azure Kubernetes service, where Rubric actually stands up separate containers for every backup job, and the system is able to scale automatically based on the workload demand. So we're able to support many customers and their large environments and helping them recover. And perhaps best of all, it's the fact that it is a whole unified strategy with Microsoft 365 and your other workloads. And something that I wanted to say too, as a testament to our protection for Microsoft 365 is, we recently announced our full certification from Microsoft for their Microsoft Teams backup and recovery. And this is a brand new certification by Microsoft. It shows our expertise in safeguarding Microsoft Teams data with protection at scale and rapid recovery. And this certification is great. We were super pleased to be able to get this. It provides Microsoft users like you trust in our solution. It's got a seal of approval that we've been tested as a Microsoft partner to provide you with quality, compatibility, reliability. And it especially provides confidence in how Rubric secures access to your team's data. So for example, Rubrik's data ingest is all done using Microsoft 365 APIs, using the Microsoft official SDKs with all the data TLS encrypted by default, and access strongly authenticated. So this is a great distinction that proves Rubrik's level of proficiency of the latest Microsoft technology, and that's instrumental in helping you protect your data across your IaaS and PaaS workloads as well, right? So it's a single API-based SaaS offering that we have with Rubric Security Cloud for visibility and control across the board. So you've got unified policies to streamline data management, which Joe is going to show you in real time. And of course, the key to recovering your data very, very quickly from a clean backup copy. So that is a super, super important thing to be able to do, provide you that confidence that you can recover quickly and easily. So I'd like to reinforce here that Rubric Security Cloud actually offers a real differentiator in terms of immutability in the cloud. So to even further protect your backup data with immutable backups for Azure Managed Disks, immutable and air-gapped backups for Azure VMs to provide that ransomware resiliency for your Azure deployments, the air-gap backup for Microsoft 365, and we also have air-gap backups for AWS RDS for our Amazon Web Services customers. A lot of people use that as well to protect from AWS account compromise. And added to this is our ability to even leverage object lock on AWS S3 to create a worm lock capability there. So think about that if you're operating also in an AWS environment. We haven't forgotten about you. As well as air-gapped cross-subscription portable backups for Azure SQL. So this has been an interesting one as of late, very, very popular to help you protect against rogue administrators or ransomware. And this is a big deal because we've been talking to a lot of customers who are planning to or are migrating from on-premises SQL Server. And I think it's worth pointing out and talking about because we offer point-in-time recoverability for Azure SQL. And the way that we do that in a secure way is by taking database snapshots that are stored in separate hardened subscription, where we then take worm locks on the uploaded data to make sure that it remains secure. And something that our customers have really loved is the portability benefit there. So being able to not just protect your data, but to recover it to a different location in the case of compromise, or even if you're just doing dev test in a sandbox environment. This is something that that customers have really been wanting to do, and it's going to be a great benefit if you are planning to move to Azure SQL or you are already using it. And keep in mind too, if you're using Azure SQL today, the only way to protect it today with Azure Backup Service actually requires a lot of complex management where you have to go inside each server, create policies inside each one. And that's why with Rubrik Security Cloud, we have this fully baked policy model to automate that protection, to make that a lot easier. So that's been a great thing for folks looking to utilize Azure SQL. So even when your security defenses fail, the important thing to remember is your data is still protected with Rubrik Security Cloud. You're resilient. You have a secure backup from which to restore your data. You have a strategy to recover quickly to keep your organization running for everyone, for all of those key players that we talked about. All right, that's enough for me. Let me turn it over now to my colleague Joe to actually see Rubrik Security Cloud in action. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Kelly. I am a cloud solutions architect here at Rubric, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to our next generation platform referred to as Rubrik Security Cloud. If you've never heard of RSC, what it does is provides a unified management interface that's going to centralize control and visibility of all your data. So whether that data set exists on premises, whether or not it exists in the cloud, we don't care. We provide the ability to be able to protect those resources through this interface itself. So you can think global management, you can think global monitoring, alerting, reporting. We'll go over for most of those aspects as part of this demo. Some of the other things that we provide are operational simplicity at scale. So think in the context of frequency and retention, and the ability to be able to take what the construct we refer to as an SLA domain and applying that to these resources within your hierarchy within Azure. So defining those at the sub-level, the resource group, and even defining those based on certain tags. We're also going to go through some of the guided workflows for recovery. So the ability to be able to pull individual files and folders out of a snapshot, the ability to be able to restore a VM to a particular point in time that you've chosen, and then also the ability to be able to export across the account boundary or sub boundary within your Azure tenant, as well as the region boundary as well. We'll also take a look at, primarily today, we'll take a look at how we're protecting Azure VMs, managed disks, Azure SQL Databases. Of course, we also support managed instances, but we'll stay in the lane of databases today, and then also our M365 protection. So we got a lot to get through in a short amount of time, so let's go ahead and get going. So I'm going to focus in on just quickly talk about how we would add a cloud account. We do have this add cloud account workflow. Simply, you provide the provider here, the cloud provider, in this case Azure. We would go through what level of protection we want to provide for this account that we're adding. You can see here we do protect or support rather virtual machines, managed disks, SQL databases, Azure SQL managed instances, and there's this notion of Exo Compute, which we'll get into in a little bit. But you can think of Exo Compute, that name is a Rubrik name, and under the covers, we are basically what facilitates Exo Compute is this ability for us to be able to spin up an AKS cluster within your account. We need this level of compute to do things such as archiving. So if you want to apply an archive location within your SLA domain, we would need Exo Compute to do that. If you wanted to provide file indexing for your particular snapshots, then we would need Exo Compute. And then last but not least, Exo Compute is also needed for any application consistent snapshots that you want to take for your Azure VMs. So assuming that all of this was required for the account that you're added, you would check those boxes. You type in your primary AD domain or custom AD domain for your AD tenant. We hit sign in. We're going to sign in with an account that has permissions to be able to create a service principal within Azure AD and custom roles within your subscription. So the custom roles will basically map to the service principal, and that's how you authenticate into your account using OAuth 2.0, and then that service principal will be defined to the level of access that those custom roles have. So a very easy process to get that going. If I were to add a domain in here, the next screen after I log into Azure would be us selecting regions and subscriptions where you have resources that you want to protect. It's really just a couple more screens outside of this, and then we would have the ability to go out and discover those Azure VMs within those particular locations. Once they're discovered, they're going to show up in these inventory cards here. So I'll go to the all section for inventory cards. You can see here that I have SaaS-based Cloud, Data Center, All, and Pinned. So these are different inventory cards based on what we're protecting. So you can see here as it relates to Cloud, we protect Azure SQL Databases, managed instances. On the AWS side, EC2, RDS, and then on the GCP side, it would be basically we're orchestrating snapshots of persistent volumes and GCE instances. So we're going to jump into Azure VMs and applications. You can see here that we have a VM here that we'll be kind of demoing with today. Before we get into that level of detail, we're going to take a look at as to where we would assign these backup policies, these declarative backup policies referred to as SLA domains. Here at the top, you can see here, these are what I refer to as different entry points for the SLA domain itself. We're going to go into the process of creating an SLA domain here in just a second, but where we would apply those policies would be at these different levels. So obviously you could apply it at the VM level, managed disk, but we also have these higher level entities such as the sub, such as the resource groups, and such as tag rules. So we could very easily map an SLA at the sub level where essentially this will basically apply any SLA domain to any Azure VM that comes up within the subscriptions that you choose here. Same with the resource group. If you want to pinpoint certain resource groups and then have us assign or have RSC assign an SLA based on that resource group, that is where you would do it. And then where we have a lot of customers focusing their attention are these tag rules. These tag rules allow you to select whether you want to apply this to a VM or a managed disk. You give it a name, and then you give it the key value pair of a particular tag that you are utilizing within your Azure tenant as of today. Here at the bottom, you would choose onesie twosies, your subscriptions that you want to apply this tag rule to. You could do all of it with this one checkbox. And then in essence, the next screen will allow us to select the SLA that will get assigned based on the tag that we define here, right? So very easily, or kind of to simplify this process, you have a tag that exists on an Azure VM. You're telling RSC about this tag with this key value pair, and then what subscriptions you want to apply that to. And then the next screen, once I hit next, once I pre-populate this information, I would choose the SLA that I want to assign as part of this tag rule. At that point, RSC takes her from there, right? So anytime it sees that particular tag, it's going to automatically assign that level of protection to that particular resource. So very easy way to get going and to automate protection of those resources across multiple subscriptions. So this product, this solution, RSC, really does an awesome job of operating at scale. If you have a single account, then you have a single account. If you have hundreds of accounts and you're looking to kind of simplify data protection and some of the capabilities that RSC provides, then this is the solution for you. We'll jump back into virtual machines here. Some of the items that we see here are specific to Azure, such as VM size, subnet, VNets, etc. And then over here on the right-hand side, we can see things specific to Rubric, such as file indexing, exocompute, and then the assignment of the SLA domains. You can see here in particular, this does not have an SLA domain. However, we do have some snapshots associated with this VM that we'll take a look at here for the recovery options. Now that we've kind of understood what we're looking at here, let's jump into SLA domains. So this is core to automating and operationalizing our solution. So here you choose what object types you want to protect. So it could be data center objects, could be cloud objects, could be a combination of both. These are global SLA domains. They do apply across those boundaries, those physical boundaries. You just have to choose those options, those object types as part of this workflow. In this case, we're going to choose, for the purpose of this creation, we're just going to choose Azure VM and disks. We'll hit next. And then again, the core of the SLA domain is frequency and retention. So I'm going to define that very simply as take a snapshot once a day and then retain those snapshots for 30 days. So if we left it as is and didn't go through the rest of this workflow, this would right here define the primary managed disk snapshot that's going to occur for an Azure VM. Some of the other entries here that we're going to go over here in just a second are going to provide copies of that snapshot. Down here at the bottom, you can do things such as snapshot windows if you wanted to kind of lessen the window for when we take those snapshots. And then you can also do the same type of window, time window for the first full snapshot, because we are first full incremental forever technology. We hit next. we can toggle on archiving here. So the archiving piece is very interesting from this perspective. When we create an archive location, we're defining within RSC the storage account and the level and the disk tier associated with that storage account for those archive entities. So for instance, this archive in particular, we've defined it within a storage account that's defined as cool. So those objects will go into that cool tier. Hot and cool is what we support today. This is a cool tier archive location. Some of the other things that we apply to this location as well as we're creating, so we do create this archive location as part of the workflows within RSC. We are turning on blob-based immutability, and we are turning on versioning within that storage account itself. Why you would want to use archiving, we'll get into some of this threshold capabilities down here at the bottom, and why you would want to use archiving is really for multiple different reasons. One, you're getting those snapshots off of the very expensive managed disk tier, if you will, for those managed disk snapshots, and you're bringing them down to object storage, which is going to save you dollars. We're also compressing those snapshots as well, in the neighborhoods of 40 for 50% compression that we would apply to those particular snapshots. And then finally, we're also applying immutability. So we do provide this sliding window approach to the immutability aspect for those blobs. So for instance, if you had a 6-week retention on those snapshots, when those snapshots hit that archive location, we're going to automatically apply a 4-week retention lock to that blob. 2 weeks into that 4-week period, so just let me say that again, 2 weeks into that 4-week period, we're going to extend that window for immutability another 4 weeks. So now we're at our full 6-week retention, right? So we're doing the sliding window so we don't have to apply the full immutability. If you have much longer retentions, we're doing so in a very incremental way. So cost optimization, saving money as it relates to storing those snapshots. The compression, so we're storing those in a very optimized manner, and then also, last but not least, is the immutability aspect of that archive. Down here at the bottom, we have the ability to do instant archiving. If we desire, that means that we're going to instantly archive to that location once we create the snapshot. We can define when we want that archiving to take place if we weren't doing instant archive, because obviously that's going to be instant. So we can say here, I want you to archive after 3 days, right? So after 3 days of managed disk snapshots, we'll begin archiving on the 4th day to that archive location. If we enable instant archive, now I have the ability to set some sort of retention on the local storage, which means at the primary location, the snapshot closest to the Azure VM, I can now set a retention on that for how long I want to keep those snapshots. So in this case, you can see here with 0 days, I'm going to instantly archive that snapshot once it's taken, that primary managed disk snapshot. I'm going to archive it, and then I'm going to delete that primary. So I have nothing resident within that managed disk tier. This is great for cost optimization. However, if I wanted to maintain a couple days on local storage, I could do that by sliding the scale over. So very interesting aspect as it relates to cloud native protection. This is a huge one, in my opinion, for Azure workloads. Now we get into really the tertiary copy, right? The ability to be able to replicate that across regions. So a lot of customers obviously design around the potential outage of a region. We can replicate those snapshots across region with this option. So you would just choose your destination region, usually a region outside of the primary, and then we would expire those replica copies based on the retention that you set here. Last but not least, we have our confirmations page. You just review what we've inputted so far, and we'd hit create. Now that we have an SLA domain, we can go back to our inventory tab. We go to the Azure Vms Inventory card, and then I can begin assigning that SLA at these different levels, or I can assign it directly to the VMs that exist in this list. So we're going to jump into the VM in particular and take a look at some of the options here that are presented to us. So on the left-hand side, we do have this overview tab, which again is going to give us detailed information on the level of protection, Rubric protection that we're offering for this VM, and then also some of the object details around where it exists within Azure. We can also see what managed disks it has allocated to it, and then we do have the ability up here to be able to exclude those disks other than the OS disk. You can see here it's grayed out. And then down here at the bottom, if we did want to do application consistent snapshots, there would be some level of configuration that would need to be done with pre and post scripts, and we would require the agent and guest to do so. I also have the ability over here, since I do have indexing, or do have some index snapshots in this case with this VM, I do have the ability to search across those snapshots for files and folders, whatever that name is. I'm going to do a very simple search for etc or etc. And then I can see the selected snapshot and the ability to recover from that. And then also over here on the events, I can see any failures that have taken place and dig into some of the details, and then of course go through and correct some of the maybe the architectural type changes that need to take place for this to complete. So very detailed information as it relates to the events associated with this VM. Of course, we also have a global event viewer that will report on all the events associated with those objects under the purview of RSC itself. And then last but not least, this snapshot section or column does provide us to have a view into all the snapshots that have been taking place for this particular VM. If we jump into overview again, we go to the calendar view. Now we'll get into some of the recovery options. So I'll pick a snapshot, and then I'll go through each of these recovery options. So recover files, again, I can search, right? Same type of search capabilities. I pick my files, I hit next. In this case, I have the ability, since we do have multiple copies of this particular VM, I can choose what snapshot I want to recover from. I hit next. And then today, for file and folder recovery, it is to a storage account, either existing or a new storage account. We can create that for you. If we jump back to the restore option, very simple workflow here. This allows us to basically replace disks associated with a virtual machine based on the snapshot we've chosen. So we orchestrate that entire process while still maintaining the original virtual machine ID and any private IPs associated with that VM itself. So we'll power it down, swap the disk, power it back up. We handle all that for you. The export option, this is where it gets interesting, right? So now we can do exports from multiple different copies depending on how this is configured. So we'll say in this case I'll choose from the original copy. I can change the machine name, the virtual machine name. I can go cross subscription with this export if I wanted to, so I can go across that account boundary or billing boundary, if you will. I can also change the resource group, go across region. So a lot of different options for launching this particular VM, as it is going to be a new VM based on the original VM and that snapshot of that point in time. So great flexibility, great simplicity as it relates to backing up and recovering these particular instances or VMs within Azure itself. We'll take a look at Azure SQL Databases real quick. Same type premise. You'll notice that as we move between different services, very different services, the look and feel and the layout is very similar. So again, these are the databases that we've discovered, just like the Azure VMs. They show up in the middle here. These are our filtering options, and these are the different levels that we can assign SLAs at. If we jump into the demo SQL VM, you can see here, same level of detail, overview events, and then I have the option to recover, because we are doing log-based backups with this particular database. I can recover from a particular point in time that has been taken, or I can recover from a snapshot that's been taken. So if we're looking at this calendar view, you can see that this green line denotes log-based backups, and then these checkboxes denote snapshots, snapshot-based backups. So we'll take a look here on a particular date. We'll choose the 8th. And then there's two different potential workload flows here. So we do have this slider scale here where we can slide to very granular point in times to do log-based recovery. These cameras denote the scheduled snapshots that we've chosen. The recover for the log backup would take place as follows. So we choose the database name. It would need to be different from the original. We are doing an export essentially, so there doesn't allow for a lot for the ability to restore back to the originating database. So we are creating a new database as way of the export. We can't change the region for these log-based backups, can't change the database server or resource group, but we can change things such as backup redundancy or the elastic pool, or add an elastic pool if we have one available here, and we can change whether or not the tags are exported. So that would be the recovery for log-based recovery. For a snapshot-based recovery, we can go here. We've got both an on-demand and a scheduled. We'll just go to the scheduled one. Now we've got options where we can do things like go cross-subscription and cross-region with this export as well. So we would need to define those credentials, username and password, whether they're SQL credentials or AD credentials for that database itself. And then we would select the subscription region and even go cross-database server for recovery of this particular database. So a lot of different recovery options as it relates to these databases, both in the same sub, out of the sun, out of that sub and out of that region as well. All right, so that handles kind of the Azure SQL Database piece. We'll just quickly jump into the M365 dashboard, and then we'll take a look at some of the reporting capabilities to kind of round things out. So one of the dashboards we do provide is this M365 dashboard, which is going to support the ability to back up Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And so why would you want to back up this SaaS offering from Microsoft? Well, very simply is that Microsoft is not responsible for the recovery of your data. So it's really on you to back up this data, and they typically recommend using a third party to back up your M365 applications. So hence, here we are. What we provide within this view here is the ability to not only verify that the service is online, because obviously that's important from an SLA perspective. If the service is down, we can't integrate with it. You'll start to see these two particular cards start sparking errors and warnings, and you'll also see the compliancy rate start to drop because we're not able to create those snapshots of those applications. You can also kind of drop into each of the applications themselves, see the number of protected resources, any failed and successful backups, and then the level of SLA domain compliance. You can see here in particular for Exchange, we're at 99.7%. If we wanted to assign an SLA domain to the service itself, very simple. You go into Assign SLA Domain. Here we have SLAs already defined to Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It is the same SLA, however, they could be different based on the retention and frequency requirements that you have defined for the SLA itself. All right, so let's jump into a service. We'll jump into Exchange. We'll take a look at Exchange and OneDrive just in the interest of time. Here, same look and feel within the UI, right? We have the ability to be able to, we're taking a look at users right now. We have our filtering options, and of course we have our mailboxes that have been discovered here in the middle. So let's search for my email or my mailbox. Go to Joe Kelly, and we'll go to the 8th, seems to be a good date, and then we'll go to recover. So this is quickly going to show you just the recovery process for a mailbox or contents of my mailbox. So again, my mailbox here, I'm going to hit next. Let's dig a little bit into my mailbox. Let's go grab maybe a particular email that I want recovered. I hit next. I have the ability to be able to restore it to the original user or to another user. Obviously, we use this in cases where maybe the user was let go, they were fired, and their manager wanted access to their mailbox. This will be a good use case for that. And you can see here at the top, we are going to create a folder within either the original user, myself, or another user that we will restore those contents to. So in this case, the folder would be called RBK, and then a timestamp of today. We would create that folder and then restore those contents into that folder. Next screen just is kind of a confirmation page. We hit recover, and then away that process would go to facilitate that ask. From the aspect or the perspective of OneDrive, rather, same type option. We go into, let's say, the 8th. We do a recover. We would select into the drive. Let's just choose something random here. Presentations. I'm going to choose the week 2 presentation. Choose next. Now I have one more option here. I have the ability to recover to the OneDrive the original user, myself. Again, I'm going to create this folder to restore the contents to. And then it can also go to another user. Could be a manager, could be someone else. And then I also have this third option where I can download from the cloud. So we'll zip up those objects and then provide them in a zip format for you to download to your system. We'll hit next, confirmation page as usual, and then recover. So again, you can see here we've provided this very simple way to protect your M365 applications in addition to your Azure VMs and your Azure SQL managed instances and databases. Last but not least, reporting capabilities. Obviously, reporting is a good thing, and the ability to report across all of those protection operations, no matter, again, if they're on premises or in the cloud, is certainly something you would want out of a tool like this. So we do provide that, where you could go in here, you could run this compliance report. It is going to tell you whether or not those objects are meeting their SLAs, meaning they're in compliance, or they're out of compliance, which means they're not meeting their SLA domains. And then depending on the object, you can kind of dig into that particular object and determine what's causing the hang up. It could be, potentially something environmental, could be something else. So anyway, it does allow you to jump in there and take a look and determine why it's not meeting this SLA. It could be service-based as well. We can also take these compliance reports, and again, we could take them to a CSV, PDF. We could send it via email. It add a schedule so it's sent via email. So a lot of different ways to get these reports into the appropriate hands within your organization. Alrighty, so I think that is enough for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this demo of our new next generation platform, Rubric Security Cloud. Look forward to talking with you guys in the future. Thanks so much.
Awesome. That's a great demo. Thanks so much, Joe. All right, folks. So remember, the secrets to Microsoft data resilience are a secure logical air gap, achieving that baseline backup across hybrid and multi-cloud, and of course, unifying your visibility in the process. So our team looks forward to working with you. In the meantime, please check out some of our most popular resources. We've got some great technical ones out there if you want some more in-depth information. Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft, one on Microsoft 365 architecture, and then on Azure VMs as well. Okay, Q&A. All right. Right now, we just use one cloud, and their protection is free. What's the real cost of using that instead? Yeah, absolutely. We hear this all the time. And to that, I'd say, okay, think about how much time and effort are you spending maintaining scripts or backups? Can the native tooling that you use automatically replicate snapshots to a different region or account, or restore a VM to a different account or region? Hey, can it automatically tier snapshots to a different account, right? We talked about that. If you're working in Azure, what about leveraging Azure Blob immutability? Can the native tools index and allow you to quickly find a single file and recover it? How long does that take you today to actually find a VM and recover it with the native tools? If your organization is dynamic, like so many are, what happens if you change cloud providers? That's a real possibility, right? You add on providers, right? You have more than one. And if you're thinking about costs, consider if you require long-term retention of snapshots. If so, it's possible we can even help save you money with storage tiering. We have that as an inherent part of our architecture. But it really comes down to the benefit of having simplified, unified management, the policy-based automation, just an overall way to reduce cyber risk, let alone avoid paying the ransom in a cyber attack scenario, right? So that's kind of an invaluable thing. All right, what's the security in place when I give Rubric permission to my entire environment? Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, any data protection solution is going to need permissions in order to back up and restore the data into your cloud account. So I think that's important to say. In order to protect Azure virtual machines, for example, so Rubrik Security Cloud needs a means by which to interact with your Azure subscription. So When you authorize Rubrik Security Cloud to access the Azure subscriptions that require the protection, it's via an OAuth workflow, and that aligns with the Microsoft Azure security best practices. After you go through that authorization process, then Rubric can then leverage the native snapshotting and storage capabilities of Azure via the Azure Storage and Azure Compute APIs. And that's what gives the access to back up, to replicate, to restore the data that we're protecting for you. Now, access to those APIs is controlled by Azure Active Directory. So when you're thinking about serious destructive actions like delete snapshots, do know that we constrain those permissions as much as possible. There's also a lot of visibility into the permissions that Rubric assigns by looking at particular tags. So it's all a very, very transparent sort of thing. And our team would be happy to go into more of the details there with you, but it is a very secure process. Okay. What replication is there on the data stored in Rubrik's Azure tenant? Sure, yeah. So we replicate the data backups to 3 data centers within the same Azure region, and that is for redundancy. Okay. Has Rubric added real-time scanning of backups, or is it all post-process? Yeah, so our primary focus as a company is around being really the last line of defense in your security posture when you're taking this defense in depth approach. And because of that, that means that we're designing the products with this mindset of assume a breach has happened, right? It's our zero trust approach, which is why anomaly detection is not real time, right? Things that we do are after the fact. So from Microsoft's standpoint, just as an FYI, they've even said that this partnership is allowing them also to look at how last line defense mechanisms really go along with the frontline defenses provided by Microsoft security to ensure that your backups are ransomware free. They're available to recover whenever you need them as well. So yes, we are all about assuming a breach has already happened and being able to recover data.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. So thank you so much to both Kim and to Joe for being here today. I hope you're all feeling a little more resilient already. And I know there were a lot of questions that we didn't get to just now, but don't worry. I want to reassure you that all of those questions are going to go to the Rubric crew. And so you will get some follow-up answers from them as well after we wrap today. And if you are looking for more exciting content right away, we just saw a couple of cool resources Kim had up on the screen, and you can find them right there in your Handouts tab. So if you head on over to that Handouts tab, you're going to find we've got the Rubrik Security Cloud, how it works, cloud native protection for Azure VMs, plus the Rubric white paper, Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft environments, and the Rubric technical white paper, Microsoft 365 architecture and security. Now, there's also the slide deck from today. So if you really enjoyed that presentation, and you'd like to kind of go back through it right away, you can head on over to that Handouts tab and grab the slide deck. Well, I know you're waiting for it, and it's not exactly a big reveal because it's up on the screen here, but it is already time for another prize giveaway. So let's get into it. All right, so we have a $300 Amazon gift card, and a reminder that you do need to be here present at the live webinar in order to win. And this Amazon gift card is going to Jeff Schulman from Connecticut. Jeff Schulman from Connecticut, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card, so congratulations. As always, we'll be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar wraps. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I really want to thank Rubric for making this webinar possible. A giant thank you again to both Kim and to Joe for an absolutely fascinating presentation today. I know I learned a ton. I hope you all did as well. I also want to send out a big high five to all of you out there in the audience for attending, for asking some really wonderful questions today about ransomware, about Azure, Microsoft 365, data protection. I mean, we covered a lot today. And when you guys show up and you bring that energy and you ask those questions, not only does it make it a more interesting discussion, we all learn from each other, and it's just a really great opportunity to explore some of these ideas together. So for me, I find webinars like this, even, I don't know if you can hear it, I'm a little under the weather today, but I'm so happy that I still get to come and be a part of these webinars with all of you, because there is a lot of energy and excitement and enjoyment to exploring these things together. So keep those questions coming, keep visiting us, keep making us part of your tech journey and exploration wherever you are. And until we get to chat again, I hope you all have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.